When trust is betrayed, a powerful woman's life will change forever. Welcome to the gripping story of Eleanor Vance, a woman who has it all: wealth, power, and success. But can power protect her from dark conspiracies? Today's story is not just a battle between truth and lies, but a journey from loneliness and fear to an inner strength no one ever expected. From the quiet footsteps of a maid to the dangerous schemes of a husband, the truth will be unveiled, but at what cost? Join us as we dive into this surprising and intense tale. Don't miss it. The dawn in New Orleans doesn't arrive gently. It's brilliant and dazzling, pouring honeyed gold light over wrought iron balconies and red brick awnings. Eleanor Vance loved the way the light filtered through the towering windows of the Hale mansion, touching the heavy velvet curtains and awakening the ancient oil paintings. She was not the one who inherited this wealth. She was the one who created it. Every brick, every square foot of land here bore the mark of her will and her pretty. Eleanor Vance didn't just build a real estate empire, she built a fortress, an impenetrable fortress. That same resilience defined her. After a broken marriage and years of struggling to prove herself in a man's world, Eleanor learned that emotions were a costly luxury. Trust was a fragile commodity, and love was just a high-risk transaction. She had slammed the door on her heart, leaving an empty space only for work and numbers. She became a queen, cold and powerful, respected by all but approached by none. Inside her fortress, she had everything: priceless furniture, Italian marble statues, and a professional staff invisible as ghosts. Among them was Serena Price, the new maid. Serena didn't have the appearance of a traditional maid. She was tall and slender, with intelligent coffee-colored eyes and an unnameable sadness. She moved silently, her hands deftly wiping away invisible smudges, arranging every book perfectly. Serena never said much, but her eyes observed everything. They were like a mirror reflecting everything in this house, even the cracks that Eleanor tried to hide. Eleanor noticed this, and she didn't like it. She was too used to employees who simply bowed and obeyed. Serena brought an unsettling feeling, as if she were silently judging her, judging the very world she had created. "Where's my coffee?" Eleanor's voice cut through the air, sharp as a knife. Serena entered, placing the white porcelain cup on the desk. "Here is your coffee, ma'am." Her voice was soft and even. Eleanor didn't look up, her hands still gliding over the tablet screen. "You should know that I like this cup to be lukewarm, not too hot, and without foam." "Yes, ma'am," Serena replied, no excuses, no sign of resistance. Just a quiet acceptance that made Eleanor feel as if she were talking to a wall. Eleanor's eyes glanced at Serena. "You shouldn't waste my time. I have an important board meeting today. The acquisition of the land in the Garden District needs to be approved." She said these words not to inform, but to assert her authority, to remind Serena of her position and Serena's own insignificance. Serena bowed her head. "I wish you success." It was a sincere wish, but Eleanor felt it as mockery. She sensed pity, and she hated it. Eleanor Vance didn't need pity. Julian Blackwood, Eleanor's husband, walked into the study. He was a perfect contrast to her coldness. Julian was the embodiment of warmth, charm, and glamour. His slicked-back platinum hair, a brilliant smile, and the way he naturally stroked Eleanor's arm in front of Serena, all were perfectly practiced gestures. He was a charming gentleman, a devoted husband, at least in the eyes of the world. "Good morning, my love," Julian said, his voice as sweet as honey. "You look tired." Eleanor's eyes darkened. "You know I don't like being told I look tired." "Just an observation." Julian smiled, his smile a mask that never cracked. "I just want to say I worry about you. I think you should rest today." Eleanor turned back to her work. There's no time to rest. I have a board meeting. You know that perfectly well. Julian shrugged. Of course. But do you remember your favorite pendulum clock? I accidentally dropped it. I found the best clockmaker to fix it, but he said it was too old. The fall completely destroyed it. Eleanor frowned slightly. She remembered the clock working fine just yesterday. But she had no time to think about such trivial things. All right, Julian. It was just an old object anyway. Julian smiled meaningfully. I just wanted to remind you that everything can be unexpectedly destroyed, even the things you think are indestructible. Eleanor looked at him with a puzzled expression. Julian stroked her hair and left. Serena had witnessed the entire conversation. She looked at the clock on the wall, the shiny silver clock that was still ticking perfectly. Serena knew it was a lie. She didn't understand what Julian wanted, but she knew something was wrong. That afternoon, while Eleanor was busy with her online meeting, Julian wandered through the mansion. He went to the main staircase, a large white marble structure. He walked up step by step, testing the stability of each one. Then, using a small pair of pliers, he furtively loosened a few screws on the handrail. The faint scraping sound of metal against metal was almost inaudible, and Julian smiled. Serena passed through the hallway carrying a new bouquet of flowers to decorate the living room. She saw Julian. He quickly hid the pliers in his pocket and smiled at her, the smile of a gentleman. Well, Serena, you seem busy. Serena nodded. Yes, sir. Do you know how long this staircase has been here? Julian asked, his voice intimate. Over 100 years. It's incredible, isn't it, that a structure can be so resilient while people are so fragile. Serena didn't answer. She just stood there looking into his eyes. She didn't see the respect he tried to show, only an inexplicable coldness hidden deep within. Julian left, leaving a void and a chilling feeling. Serena walked to the staircase, placing her hand on the handrail. She felt a very slight looseness. She tried to tighten it, but it wouldn't budge. She knew something was wrong. The day passed slowly. Dark clouds began to gather, obscuring the sunlight. The air became heavy and suffocating. The New Orleans sky turned a grim green. Eleanor had ended her meeting, but she was not in the mood to celebrate. The deal was a success, but Julian's words still haunted her. My love, I've prepared a glass of red wine for you, Julian said as she entered the living room. I know you love this kind of wine. Eleanor took the glass. Thank you. Julian raised his own glass. Congratulations, Eleanor. Now you have everything you want. You are the most successful woman in New Orleans. Eleanor took a sip of wine. She didn't feel joy. Instead, she felt unease. Julian wasn't as happy as she thought he would be. He just smiled coldly. Serena quietly tidied up the dining room. She heard Julian whispering on the phone, Don't worry, she's had the wine. She'll be exhausted soon. Everyone will say she overworked herself, and then everything will end naturally. Serena couldn't believe what she was hearing. She left the dining room, running straight to Eleanor's study, where she sat with the glass of wine in her hand. She had to act. She had to do something. Eleanor's false dawn had ended and a real storm was about to break. The storm that descended upon New Orleans was not merely a natural phenomenon. It was the sky's fury, a roar that foretold a lurking tragedy. The wind shrieked through the window crevices, carrying heavy raindrops that beat against the glass, creating a wild symphony. The lights flickered and then died completely, plunging the entire Hale mansion into a thick darkness, leaving only the flashes of lightning that tore through the night like cold, sharp blades. Eleanor Vance sat in her study, the faint glow of the desk lamp her only source of light. She didn't tremble at the storm, but her heart was heavy with Julian's words. The fatigue he mentioned, the feigned gestures of concern. It all suddenly became suspicious. She remembered the pendulum clock, the blood on the doorknob, and the looseness of the staircase handrail. "It can't be," Eleanor whispered. "He couldn't possibly." Her voice was lost in the silent space where every sound was swallowed by the storm outside. Suddenly she heard footsteps. Not Julian's familiar footsteps, but the hurried footsteps of someone in a rush. Eleanor clenched her hands, her heart pounding. Was someone in the house? It must be Julian, but why was he moving so quickly? The study door creaked open and Serena Price rushed in. Her face pale. She didn't bother to knock or ask for permission. This audacity infuriated Eleanor. "What are you doing here? Who gave you permission?" Before she could finish, Serena's hand clamped over Eleanor's mouth, sealing it tight. Her hand was warm and trembling, a stark contrast to the determination in her eyes. Eleanor was startled. She pushed Serena's hand away with a dry, rustling sound in the room. Eleanor couldn't speak, but her eyes blazed with fury. "What are you doing?" "Shh, ma'am," Serena whispered urgently. "Please don't say anything." Fear surged within Eleanor, an emotion she had tried to bury for years. She recoiled, her eyes wide behind her glasses. The natural reflex of an insulted woman of power rose up. She swung her hand, slapping Serena's. The sharp sound echoed like a small explosion in the room. Serena didn't flinch. She just stood there, her eyes full of pleading. "Please," she panted, her teeth clenched. Eleanor didn't understand what was happening. Anxiety swirled in her chest, a feeling that made all logical thought dissolve. She was too used to being in control of everything, and Serena's unexpected action had stripped that control away. Her anger turned into a profound fear. She twisted her body, leaned down, and bit hard into the hand that was trying to cover her mouth. The bite was quick and strong, an instinctive wound from a panicked person. The pain shot through Serena's palm, a jolt running through her body. She winced, almost crying out, but immediately bit down on her lip, swallowing the pain back into her throat. From the hallway outside, Julian's familiar footsteps came to a halt. Eleanor's breath hitched. The entire room fell into a terrifying silence. The space between the two women seemed to freeze. One was the arrogant mistress, the other a fragile maid. But in that moment, fear had leveled all distances. The storm outside slammed raindrops against the window pane as if trying to shatter it. Julian's voice, calm and calculated, drifted from the hallway. "Well, I think tonight will be the last night." He spoke as if to himself. "She's so exhausted. Her family. There's no one left. It will look very natural." Eleanor's heart pounded as if it would explode, a constant fist against her chest. She swallowed, tasting the metallic bitterness of blood in her mouth. The bite mark on Serena's hand began to bleed, a small trickle of blood running down her wrist. But Serena still didn't let go. Her hand trembled but was strong enough to keep Eleanor's unconscious sob from escaping. The tension between them reached a climax. The black maid, the white mistress fear clashing with the instinct for survival, all intertwined in a seemingly endless moment. The footsteps moved again, slow and purposeful, gliding past the study door. The doorknob was lowered and then returned to its original position with a gentle click. For a brief second, the entire house froze. Then Julian's footsteps gradually faded, blending into the echo of the hallway. Serena finally lowered her hand, massaging her aching fingers. Eleanor's teeth marks were red on her skin, a physical wound, but also a bitter reminder. "Are you insane?" Eleanor growled, her voice low but full of authority. Serena shook her head, pain and urgency burning in her eyes. "No, ma'am. Please listen to me." Eleanor backed away, gripping the arm of the leather chair, her whole body coiled with terror. "You are never to touch me like that again. Never." "I had to," Serena whispered, her voice hoarse, swallowing a lump in her throat. "If you said his name, he would have known we were here. He would have come in and you would—" Her voice trailed off. "You would have been in danger." Eleanor stared at her. Her lips parted as the storm rattled the curtains. Suddenly, Buddy, her golden retriever, gave a sharp bark from the back staircase. Both women jumped. Eleanor's gaze shifted from Serena to her bitten hand. A thin line of blood ran from the wound, dripping onto Serena's white apron. Eleanor shuddered, her lips curled in disgust. She pushed her chair back an inch as if the sight had defiled her meticulously polished study. "My God," she whispered, her voice filled with revulsion. "You're bleeding." She gestured dismissively. "It's dirty, don't drip it on the rug." Serena stood motionless, shame and pain mixed together. She held her injured hand, but the urgency in her heart didn't allow her to retreat. "That doesn't matter, ma'am. What matters is what I just heard. He, your husband, is planning to kill you." Eleanor's head snapped back. Her face shifted from disgust to disbelief, then to rage. "How dare you!" she spat. "Do you think you can walk into my house, touch me, and then weave some jealous story because you're envious of what I have?" Her voice rose, still sharp but not loud enough to pierce the storm. "Is that it? A poor maid who can't stand to see someone who has built a great life for herself?" Serena's throat tightened. "No, ma'am. I swear, I heard him on the phone. He said you were exhausted, that everything would look natural, and tonight—" Eleanor stood up abruptly, her chair rolling backward. "Stop it! Stop this nonsense! I will not be insulted in my own home with your insane lies. You don't understand my marriage, you don't understand me." She pointed at Serena's hand with loathing. "And look at you, dirty bloody. You bring filth into my study and think you can poison me with words." Serena blinked hard, pain and tears almost overwhelming her. But she stood her ground, shoulders straight, even as her heart trembled. "Ma'am, please, I would not lie about this. You have to believe me. You are in danger." Eleanor crossed her arms, her chin held high. Her face etched with anger and denial. "Danger? The only danger in this house tonight is you, Serena Price. I don't know what you're plotting, but it ends here. If you continue with this, I will fire you before dawn." The storm rattled the windows and a thunderclap exploded close overhead. For one long moment they stared at each other. One woman held a bleeding hand, desperately pleading for trust. The other woman trembled with fury, believing she was facing betrayal from her own household. Buddy barked again, this time more sharply, as if he sensed a truth that neither of them wanted to face. Serena took a shaky breath, her voice low but steady. "You don't have to believe me, ma'am, but you have to be quiet. To save your life." Eleanor said nothing, only pulling a silk handkerchief from her pocket and holding it to her nose. The gesture seemed to be more to protect herself from Serena than from the storm. Her eyes were cold and scrutinizing, looking at Serena like an intruder rather than a protector. Outside, Julian's footsteps were heard again, faint in the hallway, and the weight of the storm bore down ever more heavily. In that heavy and unbroken silence, Serena knew that the fight for Eleanor's life had just begun. The storm had been brewing all day, pushing dark clouds from the Gulf and pressing down on New Orleans. As night fell, rain lashed against the shutters with a constant hiss, and every oak tree in the Garden District bowed under the force of the wind. Inside Eleanor's mansion, the electric lights flickered and the antique chandeliers groaned on their chains. This house was no stranger to weather. It had stood for over a century, with its sturdy brick walls and wrought iron balconies etched with years of parties. Yet tonight it seemed restless, agitated, as if even the walls could sense what was lurking in its corridors. Serena Price stood near the desk, her bitten hand wrapped in a corner of her apron. The pain was a dull throb, but it was nothing compared to the ache in her chest from Eleanor's words. Dirty jealous, a poor maid who envied her mistress's life. She had heard much worse growing up in places where people measured your worth by the color of your skin and the money you didn't have. But when the words came from Eleanor, the woman she had tried so hard to serve thoughtfully, they cut deeper. Eleanor was now pacing, her arms crossed tightly over her silk dressing gown, her heels clicking on the polished wooden floor. Every few steps she glanced at Serena with blatant suspicion, as if expecting the young woman to lunge at her with a knife. "You think I don't recognize envy when I see it?" she said abruptly, her voice crisp. "I've dealt with it my entire career. Women who couldn't keep up, men who wouldn't take orders from me, and now my own maid. Good heavens." Serena took a breath, trying to steady herself against the verbal onslaught. She wanted to argue, to reiterate what she had heard Julian say in the hallway, but she knew the words would just bounce off the armor of denial. The storm rattled the windows again, and she let the sound be the backdrop for her silence. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs time. The mansion creaked with the wind, but inside life had its own habits. Down in the kitchen, the scent of gumbo from dinner still lingered, spiced with thyme and bay leaves. The dishwasher hummed softly, its cycle regular and oblivious. Buddy the retriever whined from his bed by the back door, then got up and paced the kitchen tiles, restless. The house wanted to be at peace, but the people inside it had shattered that peace. Serena walked to the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peer outside. St. Charles Avenue was deserted. No cars glided past. No streetcar bells chimed. The storm had driven everyone indoors. Normally, the avenue would be lit by the glow from porches where older couples sat on rocking chairs, sipping bourbon or café au lait, waving to neighbors. But tonight, those porches were dark and the city felt a world away. The only light came from the lampposts, soft halos bending in the rain. Eleanor followed Serena's gaze and gave a bitter laugh. "Beautiful, isn't it? Not even a storm can make this city ugly." She reached for a silver cigarette case on the desk, flipped it open, and lit one with trembling hands. She rarely smoked, only when the stress was so great that tea and patience had no effect. A thin wisp of smoke curled up to the high ceiling, mingling with the smell of lemon in the stormy air that seeped through the cracks. Serena turned back. "Ma'am, I don't care if you think I'm jealous. I care about keeping you alive." Eleanor exhaled a sharp plume of smoke. "Alive from what? My husband bringing me tea? I should have fired you for this absurdity." Serena flinched but didn't back away. "Then fire me tomorrow. Tonight, please. Just listen." The words hung in the air, and for the first time Eleanor hesitated. She took a long drag from the cigarette, then stubbed it out, half-smoked. Her eyes softened, although suspicion still lingered in the corners. "You're shaking," she said softly. "Because I'm scared." Serena admitted, her voice even but low. "But being scared doesn't mean I'm wrong." Eleanor pursed her lips. She wasn't ready to accept that. But something in the conviction of Serena's voice had shaken her certainty. She turned away, walking to the bookshelves, running her manicured fingers along the spines of first editions collected from New York and London. "I've given Julian everything," she whispered. "Every comfort, every opportunity. You think he would throw that away?" Serena wanted to answer, but the bitterness in Eleanor's tone warned her to be silent. She stood by the desk, blood still seeping from her wound. Her head tilted slightly toward the door, listening. The silence outside was too still, like a stage waiting for the next act. A thunderclap rattled the window panes and Buddy barked again from downstairs. The sound echoed up the staircase and into the study. Eleanor frowned, finally acknowledging the dog's unease. He never barks like that unless... Her voice trailed off, the ending swallowed by suspicion. She turned to look at Serena, and for a moment the veil of contempt was pulled back, replaced by something older, more human fear. Serena seized the opportunity. "Let me protect you, please. If you can't trust me, trust your dog. He knows something is wrong." Eleanor's gaze darted to the door, then back to Serena's bitten hand. She winced again at the sight of the blood. "You'll have to clean that up. I don't want a stain on the rug." "I'll clean it later, ma'am," Serena whispered. "If there is a later." The words hung in the room as heavy as the storm itself. Eleanor took a sharp breath and turned away. She pressed her palm against the windowsill, looking out at the driving rain, and for the first time her shoulders slumped. For a woman who had spent her life building walls of silk and steel around herself, the storm outside had cracked something. Downstairs, the pendulum clock chimed 10. The hollow sound echoed through the mansion, each chime a reminder that time was still passing, whether they were ready or not. Eleanor finally spoke. Her voice was lower, more tired. "All right, Serena. You've had your say. But if I find out this is a trick, some twisted scheme, you will regret it." Serena nodded, relief spreading through her even at the threat. "That's all I ask, ma'am. Just wait and see. Let tonight prove me right or wrong." Outside, the storm surged again, rattling the iron balconies, rain hammering the glass like 1,000 fists. Inside, the mansion held its breath again. Two women from different worlds trapped together by secrets. Suspicion and an invisible danger lurking just beyond the study door. Eleanor turned back from the window, her eyes sharp again, though now clouded with a doubt she couldn't shake. "If you're right," she said slowly, "then tonight will change everything." Serena looked her straight in the eye, her bitten hand still throbbing her chest tight with the weight of the truth. "Yes, ma'am," she replied. "It will." The silence that fell over the Hale mansion after Julian's footsteps faded was heavier and more suffocating than the howling winds of the storm. In the study, the faint light from the desk lamp was barely enough to illuminate Eleanor's pale, panicked face. She stood there, her eyes fixed on the door as if an invisible monster was lurking behind it. The wall of arrogance she had spent a lifetime building was cracking, revealing a raw, primal fear. Serena said nothing. She just stood there, clutching her bitten hand. Her calm a stark contrast to Eleanor's turmoil. She knew this was the decisive moment. Either Eleanor would believe her and accept the terrible truth, or she would push her away and confront Julian alone. "Julian, he'll be back," Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling. She no longer spoke with a cold authority, but with pure fear. Serena nodded. "He's toying with you. He wants you to be afraid, to lose your composure. He doesn't want you to believe me, Mrs. Eleanor." "Why?" Eleanor looked at her, the bewilderment in her eyes palpable. "He loves me. I gave him everything." "Love is not a transaction, ma'am," Serena said, her voice firm. "Love cannot be bought with money, but power and wealth can be." Serena's words hit a raw nerve that Eleanor didn't want to admit. She had always believed she could control everything, every relationship, with her wealth. But now she was facing an enemy that money couldn't buy off deception. Suddenly, from downstairs, a loud clatter echoed, shattering the silence. The sound was like glass breaking into 1,000 pieces on the floor. Eleanor jumped, her whole body trembling. "What was that?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "He's provoking you," Serena said. "He wants you to think something is wrong. He wants you to act." "But that was the crystal vase my mother gave me." Eleanor said, pain etched on her face. He knows I love it. Serena looked at Eleanor. That's exactly what he wants you to feel. He wants you to think he's destroying the things you love so you'll run down and stop him. But Eleanor wasn't listening. I can't let him. I have to go down there. She stepped toward the door, her hand on the doorknob. Serena immediately stopped her. You can't do that. It's a trap. If you go down there, he'll end it right away. The struggle between them was no longer a confrontation between two people of different social standing, but a conflict between the instinct for survival and control. Eleanor looked at Serena, her eyes full of resentment. What are you stopping me for? Do you think I'm a weak woman? I built this empire, not Julian. Serena listened. She didn't argue back. She just stood there looking into Eleanor's eyes. She knew that Eleanor was fighting her own fear, not her. I don't think you're weak, ma'am, but I know the danger. He said he would make it look natural. Do you remember? Suddenly, from downstairs, Buddy's terrified barks rang out. The barks weren't the usual playful sounds of a dog, but panicked crews. They were followed by a short, pained yelp, then a choked whimper. Eleanor held her breath, her eyes wide. Her heart ached. She cherished Buddy more than anything in the world. The dog was her only faithful friend. She knew Julian was tormenting her dog to force her to act. Julian, what is he doing? Eleanor whispered, her voice filled with pain. Serena took Eleanor's hand, and this time Eleanor didn't pull away. He wants you to go down there, ma'am. He wants you to rush down the stairs. He wants you to fall. He wants you to be in pain. It can't be. Eleanor shook her head. He would never hurt Buddy. He said he loved him. People like him don't know how to love, ma'am. Serena said, her voice full of understanding. They only love what they can control. He's trying to control you with pain. Tears began to stream down Eleanor's cheeks. She was no longer arrogant. She had collapsed. She had lost everything. Her life was no longer a fortress. It was just a broken house. What should I do? She asked, her voice filled with despair. That question, the question of a powerful woman who had found weakness, marked a major turning point in the story. Eleanor was no longer fighting Serena. She had accepted her help. We need evidence, Serena said. She took Eleanor's phone out and turned on the voice recorder. I'll record everything he says. Will that work? Eleanor asked, her voice full of doubt. It will work, Serena said, her voice full of certainty. His lies will become the truth. Julian began his psychological game. He came back to the hallway. He walked slowly, whispering his words. She's too tired. She's overworked herself. She didn't listen to me. She'll have to pay the price. Those words were recorded, every single one. Serena held the phone tight, listening to Julian rehearse his plan. He spoke with a terrifying calmness, as if he were talking about an obvious thing, an undeniable truth. Eleanor listened to those words and felt a chill run down her spine. She had once believed that Julian was a good man. She had once believed that he loved her. But now she had to face the truth that he was just a fraud, a liar. Suddenly, Julian stopped. He stood outside Eleanor's study door, saying nothing. That silence was more terrifying than his voice. He was playing the final psychological game. What is he doing? Eleanor whispered. He's waiting. Serena said, her voice filled with anxiety. He's waiting for you to open the door. He's waiting for you to act. Serena was no longer an invisible maid. She had become a protector. She stood in front of the door like a shield. She knew she had to protect Eleanor. She had to protect the truth. You have to believe me, ma'am, Serena said. You have to believe that you are a strong woman. You have to believe that you can win. Eleanor looked at Serena, her eyes full of gratitude. She didn't say anything. She just nodded. Julian had left. He had given up. He had failed. But Serena knew that Julian would come back. He wouldn't give up so easily. She had won a small battle, but she had not yet won the war. Both women sat back in the study. The light from the desk lamp was still on, but their minds were still in the dark. They had lost everything. They had lost their trust, they had lost their peace, but they had found something more important. The truth. What should I do now? Eleanor asked, her voice hoarse. We will wait, Serena said. We will wait until we can call the police. We will wait until he comes back. We will not give up. Eleanor nodded. She was no longer a queen. She had become an ordinary woman full of fear. But she had found a friend, a companion. And that on a stormy night was enough for her to get through it all. Julian was gone, but his ghost still lingered in every corner of the mansion. The Hale mansion was shrouded in a taut silence. A stillness broken only by the sound of rain beating against the windows and the distant rumble of thunder. In the study, Eleanor and Serena sat across from each other, each an island of fear. Eleanor, who was used to giving orders, now depended completely on a young woman she once considered invisible. What do we do now? Eleanor whispered, her voice hoarse with fear. Serena looked into Eleanor's eyes, eyes that had lost their arrogance, leaving only the raw terror. We need evidence, ma'am. My word won't be enough. Julian will find a way to twist it. Serena took Eleanor's phone, her hand trembling. She opened the voice recording app, the small red button suddenly becoming immensely important. It wasn't just a phone, it was a weapon, the only evidence against a predator. You have to talk to him, Serena said. You have to make him confess. I can't. Eleanor shook her head. I can't do it. You can. Make him think you believe him. Make him think you've become weak. That's what he wants. Eleanor took a deep breath. She looked into Serena's eyes and she saw a resolve she had never seen in anyone before. She nodded. Julian! Eleanor called, her voice still trembling but with a new courage. I'm in the study. Silence. There was no answer. Only the howling wind. Julian! Eleanor called again, her voice stronger. Can you hear me? From downstairs, Julian's footsteps echoed again. He was coming up the stairs. He was returning. I've been thinking about what you said. Eleanor said, her voice becoming soft and weak like a prey surrendering. Maybe I am too tired. Julian stopped in front of the study door. I know, my love, he said, his voice as sweet as honey. I've prepared some tea for you. I know you're exhausted. Serena turned on the voice recorder, her hand trembling. Julian had fallen for the trap. He had begun to say the words he had rehearsed earlier. I know you have no family, Julian said, his voice full of false sympathy. I know you're lonely, but don't worry, my love. I'll always be by your side. Eleanor closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was listening to her own husband rehearse the story of her death. She was listening to him say the words of a murderer. Everyone will say you overworked yourself, Julian said, his voice becoming colder. They'll say you had a heart attack. They'll say you slipped on the stairs. Serena hid the phone in her pocket, her hand clenched tightly. She was recording everything. She was recording the truth. She was recording the evidence. You were so exhausted, Julian said, his voice filled with fake pity. I told you not to overwork yourself, but you didn't listen to me, and now you have to pay the price. Eleanor couldn't bear it anymore. She fell to her knees, burying her face in her hands, sobbing. Serena quickly turned off the voice recorder. She hugged Eleanor, letting her cry on her shoulder. It's enough, Serena said. The evidence is enough. Eleanor was still trembling. He really said that, she whispered. He said, about me slipping on the stairs. I know, ma'am, Serena said. But now we have the evidence. We can call the police. Serena took out her phone, her hand trembling. She dialed 911, her voice just low enough for only she could hear. This is an emergency. The billionaire Eleanor Vance is being threatened by her husband, Julian Blackwood. We are in the study on the second floor. We'll be there immediately, the dispatcher said. Stay calm. Serena hung up. She looked at Eleanor. They're coming. We have to wait. No, I can't. Eleanor shook her head. I can't wait. I can't let him. I have to do something. You have to be calm, Serena said, her voice full of strictness. You have to trust me. They're coming. We just have to wait. But Eleanor didn't listen. She stood up, went to the door. She opened the door, looked out. Julian. Eleanor called, her voice trembling. I'm sorry, I was too tired. I didn't listen to you. Serena rushed to her, covering Eleanor's mouth. No, Serena growled. Don't talk. He'll know you talked to the police. Julian had heard. He had heard Eleanor's voice. He had heard Serena's voice. He knew he had been betrayed. Thunder rumbled, rain poured down. The Hale mansion trembled. You! Julian roared, his voice full of anger and hatred. What have you done? Julian stormed into the study. He stared at Serena, his eyes full of rage. He knew she had betrayed him. He knew she had recorded everything. What have you done? Julian asked, his voice cold. Serena said nothing. She just looked at him. Julian laughed, a laugh full of contempt. You think you can stand against me? You're just a poor maid. No one will believe you. They will believe me, Serena said, her voice full of certainty. They will believe Mrs. Eleanor. Julian laughed slyly. No, they won't. They'll think she's gone insane. They'll think she made up this story to fire me. Eleanor stood up, looking at Julian. She was no longer afraid. She had found her courage. Julian, what did you do to Buddy? Buddy. Julian laughed, a sinister laugh. Did you know Buddy is a smart dog? He tried to stop me, but I taught him a lesson. Eleanor screamed. She lunged at Julian. What did you do to him? Julian pushed Eleanor away. She fell to the floor. Serena lunged at Julian, but he was faster. He kicked her and she fell to the floor. You think you can stand against me? Julian laughed. You're just a maid. Julian went to the desk, taking Eleanor's phone. You think you can record me? You think you can use that as evidence? Julian slammed the phone onto the floor. The phone shattered into pieces. The evidence was gone. You think you can win? Julian laughed. I'll show you the truth. Julian went to the door, locking it. He turned back, looking at Eleanor and Serena. His eyes were full of cruelty. You think you can get out of here? Julian laughed. No way. You'll never get out of here. Serena crawled up. She went to Eleanor's side. Are you okay? I'm okay, Eleanor whispered. But we've lost the evidence. Serena shook her head. No, we haven't lost the evidence. We still have the evidence. Serena took out another phone from her pants pocket. It was her phone. She had recorded everything. I recorded everything, Serena said. Julian admitted everything. He said he did what he did. Julian looked at the phone in Serena's hand, his face pale. He had been tricked. He had been betrayed. Julian lunged at Serena, but at that moment the police siren sounded. Julian stopped. He looked out the window, his eyes full of panic. He was trapped. He was surrounded. Julian turned back, looking at Eleanor and Serena. He laughed a laugh full of anger. You think you can win? He spat. No way. I'll never let you win. Julian lunged at Eleanor, but Serena stood in front of her. Julian pushed Serena away. She fell to the floor. Julian lunged at Eleanor, but the study door was smashed open. The police had arrived. They had come to arrest Julian. Julian looked at the police. He knew his game was over. He had lost. He had failed. He was arrested. Serena crawled up. She went to Eleanor's side. Are you okay? I'm okay. Eleanor whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. We survived. Serena nodded. Yes, we survived. The police had handcuffed Julian. He was taken outside. Julian looked at Eleanor, his eyes full of anger and hatred. You'll pay the price, he spat. You'll pay the price for what you've done. Eleanor said nothing. She just looked at him. She had won. The police had left. Eleanor and Serena remained in the study. Eleanor hugged Serena. She cried. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for saving me. Serena hugged Eleanor. She also cried. It's okay, ma'am. You did the right thing. The two women sat back in the study. The storm had passed. The rain had stopped. The light had returned. But their lives had changed forever. The dawn in New Orleans brought not only sunlight but a strange silence. A stark contrast to the tense quiet of the previous night. The storm had passed, leaving waterlogged streets and scattered broken branches. The Hale mansion, a symbol of luxury, now looked like a conquered fortress with tire tracks from the police cars marking the driveway and a battered front door. In the living room, Eleanor sat on a velvet sofa, a wool blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She was still wearing the same worn silk nightgown from the night before. Her face was gaunt, her eyes bruised from lack of sleep, but her gaze was no longer one of panic. Instead, it held a deep weariness and a steely resolve. Julian had been arrested. He had been handcuffed and taken away. His screams had faded into the night, but his final threat still echoed in her head. You'll pay the price. Serena entered carrying a cup of tea and a slice of toast. She carefully set the tray on the table, her hand still wrapped in a white bandage that stood out against her dark skin. The throbbing pain from the wound was still there, but it was insignificant compared to the relief of survival. She knew the fight wasn't over. Julian had money, power, and connections. He could get out of jail. But she wasn't afraid. You should eat something, Serena said, her voice gentle but firm. Eleanor shook her head. I'm not hungry. I don't know what to do now. You must eat. You need strength to face what's to come. You know that people like Julian won't give up easily. Eleanor looked at Serena, her eyes full of gratitude. What will they say, Serena? The journalists, the investors, my competitors, what will they say? They'll say whatever they want. Serena said, her voice full of toughness. But they can't erase the truth. They can't erase what Julian said on the recording. Eleanor gave a bitter laugh. The truth doesn't matter in my world. What matters is the image. Your world has changed, ma'am, Serena said. You survived the storm. Now you have to face another storm. The storm of public opinion. Eleanor took a deep breath. She looked at Serena, and for the first time she no longer saw a maid. She saw a friend, a companion. I won't let them win, Eleanor said, her voice full of determination. I will fight. 2 days later, Eleanor and Serena walked into the courthouse. Outside, a crowd of reporters was waiting. Cameras flashed continuously, their clamor filled the air. Mrs. Vance, did your husband really try to kill you? Ms. Price, do you have any evidence? Are you two trying to make money from this? Eleanor and Serena said nothing. They just walked straight into the courthouse, shoulders straight, heads held high. They were no longer afraid. They had found their strength. Julian sat in the courtroom, his eyes full of contempt. He sneered when he saw Eleanor and Serena. He thought he had won. He thought he could twist the truth. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Julian's lawyer said, this is a fabricated story. Eleanor Vance, an overworked woman, has gone insane, and Serena Price, a jealous maid, has tried to manipulate her to seize her fortune. Eleanor didn't flinch. She had faced these lies her entire life. She had learned how to fight. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Eleanor said, her voice full of conviction. I once thought that strength came from money and power. But I was wrong. Strength comes from the truth. And Julian, he has no truth. He only has lies. Eleanor didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She spoke with calmness and strength. She recounted everything, from the pendulum clock to the staircase to Julian's threats. "He didn't just want to kill me," Eleanor said. "He wanted to destroy me. He wanted everyone to think I had gone insane, but I didn't, and I never will." Serena also took the witness stand. She didn't tremble. She looked Julian straight in the eyes, her gaze filled with loathing. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Serena said, "Julian called me a poor maid. He said no one would believe me, but I have the evidence." Serena turned on her phone. Julian had been tricked. He thought he had destroyed the evidence, but he hadn't. "This is the evidence," Serena said. "This is the proof of Julian's evil." The recording was played. Julian's voice echoed throughout the courtroom. He talked about Eleanor's fatigue. He talked about how she would slip on the stairs. He talked about how no one would ask questions. Julian stared at Serena, his eyes full of rage. He had been betrayed. He had been tricked. He had lost. "Stop!" Julian's lawyer said. "This is just a doctored recording." "It's not," Serena said, her voice full of conviction. "It's the truth." Julian was led away, his eyes full of anger and hatred. He was defeated. He had failed. A few days later, the jury returned its verdict. Julian Blackwood guilty. Eleanor didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She just sat there looking at Julian. She had won. Serena also sat there, her eyes full of pride. She had saved Eleanor. She had saved herself. Eleanor and Serena left the courtroom. They were no longer mistress and maid. They had become friends. They had become allies. They had become family. Julian was sentenced. He was sent to prison. He could never harm Eleanor again. And Eleanor, she had learned a valuable lesson. She had learned that strength doesn't come from money and power. Strength comes from the truth and from courage. She had found her voice, and she would never be silent again. And just like that, Eleanor's fortress crumbled, revealing a truth more powerful than any wealth or power she ever had. What would you do if you found yourself in a life or death struggle for truth and survival? Eleanor's story shows us that even the strongest walls can fall. But it's the truth that gives us true strength. If you found this story as thrilling as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales like this. Leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts. Could you have trusted Serena? Or would you have doubted her too? Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is speak the truth. See you in the next video.